Friends, the title of today's message is Locked Doors and Lingering Doubts. And I'd like to read for you a portion of today's text. I encourage you to read all of the text for yourself when you get a chance. It's from John, the Gospel of John, chapter 20. And the text we're focusing on today are verses 19 through 31. I'm not going to read every one of those verses, but you can catch up with all of it a little later in your own reading. But listen to the Word of God. These are events that took place on the day of Jesus' resurrection. This is taking place it begins in the evening of that very first day, Easter Day, after Jesus has been raised from the dead by God's unbelievable power. On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he had said this, he showed him his hands and his side, and the disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Again, Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." And now we're jumping down to verse 24. Now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." And he said to them, "Unless I see the marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." And then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." And Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." May God add his blessing to the reading of his holy word today. So the disciples had their doors locked this Easter evening, and they were locked in behind locked doors because they were afraid, the scriptures say. John says, we don't know who he means necessarily by disciples. He almost certainly means the 10 remaining apostles. Of course, Judas is gone, and we know Thomas is not there. So there's at least 10 there. It seems reasonable that the women who have traveled with them and traveled with Jesus are there. So that probably adds a few. And there could be others, because John is pretty loose with his word disciples and who he means by that. So we don't know for sure how many people were there. We do know for sure that Thomas was not there. And if Mary was there, Mary Magdalene, who had been to the tomb earlier that morning and had encountered Jesus, was there, she was surely saying over and over again, "It was him. I saw him. He was alive. He talked to me." But I'm suspicious, because they are hiding behind locked doors, that they were not convinced. They were saying to themselves, "Well, you know, Mary didn't get any sleep last night. None of us got any sleep last night. She must have been very tired there this morning, and she told us that she was crying, and she ran into a fellow she thought was the gardener, and maybe she just fell asleep and she dreamed all of this." So I doubt if they were fully convinced at this cross. I really don't know what they thought at this crossroads. None of us do. But what's happening in their lives is really incredible. It's really hard to believe. And what's not hard for them to believe is the reality of the crucifixion of Jesus that was terrifying. And that's causing them tremendous fear. So they were definitely afraid. The doors were locked. And then Jesus just shows up. And he says, how did he get in? John doesn't say, so we don't know. But somehow he got into that locked room, and he apparently did not come through the door. he says, "Peace be with you." And I expect that what he saw were open mouths and staring eyes like deer in headlights. And so then he said, look at my hands. Folks, look at my hands. Look at my side. It's me. I'm alive. You see? As you see? And then, John says, they started to rejoice. And then Jesus sort of started over. He said, "Peace be with you." And then he said something interesting to them. Just in the same way that God sent me to you, I've come here now to send you out into the world. Now, sometime later, Jesus was gone, and Thomas, the missing apostle, arrives. And they say to him, those who were gathered there, the disciples say, "We saw Jesus. We saw Jesus." And Thomas responds sort of the way they had responded earlier to Mary. I don't know, you're all pretty tired. Who knows what's going on here? But there's just this one thing. When I see him myself, when I put my hands into the nail marks and into his side, then I'll believe, and not before. Now I want to fast forward. I want to fast forward with you now to a week later. Because John says they were gathered in that room a week later, and once again, the doors were locked. We have to assume it's because they are still afraid. 7 days have gone by since Jesus appeared to them in person, and they are still locked inside this room. They're still trying to digest this thing that's going on around them. It's overwhelming. The week before, Jesus said to them, do you remember? "I want you to go." But apparently they did not go because they are traumatized. They are behind locked doors because they have lingering doubts. I don't know what they believed, but whatever it is they believed, it is not strong enough to make them want to venture out, to dive back in. So the door is locked. Jesus once again gets inside. John doesn't tell us how, so we don't know. But what Jesus does is continues to show them what they need to see to help them integrate this new experience they're having, to help them process, to help them understand how all of this that's happened in these last few days it affects their faith. He gives them physical evidence. They can see with their eyes and their ears, and they can hear with their ears, and they can touch with their fingers. What he's doing is helping them transform their lingering doubt into long-term trust. He's helping them to change their locked doors into open hearts. And what a beautiful story this is about Jesus the Christ connecting with these people, these disciples who he has loved, who have loved him, and drawing them into God's grace, drawing them into stronger faith. That is a beautiful story. But we might reasonably say, what about us? Because Jesus talked about us too in this text when he said to Thomas, "You've seen and believed. Blessed are those who haven't seen and yet believe." He's talking about us, right? And we might reasonably say the disciples who were there and saw this whole thing, they had doubts. What about us? And I want to say to you that doubt is not the enemy of faith. It's a tool that we can use to refine and build and strengthen our faith. You ever been in a situation in your life that just knocked the wind out of you? That just knocked you down emotionally and physically and spiritually? Maybe something happened in your life and you had hoped that God would act in a certain way, that you believed and expected God would do certain things, and God has not done what you hoped, and God has not acted in the way you expected, and it left you saying, God, where are you? Have you forgotten me? God, are you there? I was involved in a sort of a group, support group conversation a few days ago in which there was a lady present who was grieving the death, the suicide death of her husband a couple of months ago. And she was talking about that sense of loss and grief she had, and also about how it impacted her faith, that she was really struggling with a relationship with God because of this event. And the moderator of that group said to this lady, could you say that you are grieving two deaths? That you are grieving the death of your husband and also grieving the death of your God? And the woman responded, yes, that's exactly what's happening. And that moderator's way, that counselor's way of talking to her helped her open up about what she was feeling. That she was saying, the God that I have believed in, the God that I have put my faith in, did not act in the way I expected that God to act. And now I have to say, how does this all impact my relationship with God? Because the God, as I understood him, apparently is not the God as God is. And so it was very challenging for her. And having those questions where we're not sure that our understanding of God is right anymore, that's doubt. And if you feel doubt, you are not alone. If you don't think that's true, take a cruise through the Bibles and go to the book of Psalms, and you're going to see poem and song, one after another, of people expressing these very feelings. And you know what? You don't even have to go to the book of Psalms. You can go to the crucifixion texts of Jesus, and you will see that Jesus quotes the first line of the 22nd Psalm when he says, as he is dying on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, maybe sometime in your life somebody told you that no doubt was allowed in your faith. And I want to say to you respectfully and humbly, that is not so. You cannot help but have questions if your faith is growing. C.S. Lewis, one of my favorite theologians and writers, says that frequently doubt arises from traumatic events, events in which our emotions are so overwrought that they sort of overpower our spirit self and overpower our ability to reason. And that's where some doubt comes from. And he also says there is such a thing as honest doubt. When we are searching for the truth of God in a changing world, it's going to raise questions. And those we can call doubts, those questions. But that doubt serves our growth. And the result is an improved, stronger faith that begins to emerge as we process and work through those questions. I want you to know not only is doubt a thing that can help your faith grow, but that Jesus understands that doubt, and Jesus is patient with us in that process. Just look at the text we just shared and see how Jesus treated his disciples as they were struggling to get this new experience integrated into what they believed about God and about Jesus and about life and death. Jesus is patient with them, not only with those folks gathered in those locked rooms as he helped them work through their struggles, but he lingered on earth for weeks after in post-resurrection appearances, talking to people, making himself available to people, people seeing him, being with him, hearing him talk, explain, helping them grow in grace. Jesus understands and is patient in this process of faith development and growth. One of my favorite texts in the scripture is in Mark chapter 9. It's the story of a man who has a son who is sorely afflicted with a seizure disorder. In the text, it's characterized as a demon possession. This father brings this boy, young man, to Jesus. And Jesus says, how long has he been like this? And the man says he's been this way all his life. And it is so terribly hard on him, the things that happen and the manifestations of this disease or this demon that's affecting him. And it's just so heartbreaking to him and heartbreaking to his family. And I've heard of you and I've come to you because my hope is that you can heal him. If you can heal him, I would be so grateful. And Jesus picks out one part of what the man says. He says, if you can, don't you know that great things are possible for those who believe? And the man, to his credit, is so honest with Jesus. He just opens himself right up. He opens his heart up to Jesus. And he says this, and I can just see him sort of looking down at his feet with the tears maybe welling up in his eyes. And he says to Jesus, I believe. Help my unbelief. And Jesus does not give him a lecture about how he should have had stronger faith, and things are not going to go his way now because he didn't have strong enough faith. And if he has any bit of a doubt, then he's going to have to leave and come back and work on that doubt. He doesn't say anything to the man. Jesus just gives him exactly what he had come for. He heals the child. He gives him the thing this man needs to grow in faith. Jesus understands that we struggle with questions sometimes. God knows our need to process these questions, to process these doubts. And God gives us tools to help us do so. Tools that will help us build a stronger faith and trust. We can know God more fully through the Scriptures. Immerse yourself in the Scriptures. You can know God more fully through church tradition, all those saints who have gone before, all that we have learned from theologians and writers and people who have shared their life experiences in the world and with God, and we can draw on all of that tradition. We have this capacity to reason God gave us to help us sort things out and understand things. And we have our own personal spiritual experience with God that we can rely on to help us know God better. And we can grow, we can move through doubt toward faith through the means of grace, things like prayer, worshiping together, connecting with each other, turning ourselves outward into the world, serving others, all and these and lots of other ways. God, through all of these ways and means, helps us open our doors to this new life. And you know what else? God means for all of us to be involved in that process, not only in the process of our own faith development, but in each other's faith development as we help each other grow in grace and help each other grow in faith and work through our questions. So here's my question for all of us today, wherever you may be. Is that what you're doing with your life? Is this what we're doing with our lives? Are we helping one another change lingering doubt into long-term trust? Are we working to help one another open up locked doors and helping those locked doors become open hearts? Is that what we're doing? And if that's not what we're doing in our lives, or if it's not what we're doing to the extent we would like to do it or think we could do it, how do we get to that place? It's a good question, and we're going to be talking about that very question over the next few weeks as we work our way through a sermon series, a message series called Living the Resurrection Life. And friends, I hope that you'll be part of it. God bless you.